in that interpretation, we don't have to insert any allegorical framework that would talk about old versus new, Judaism being out, Christianity being anything. We just talk about common sense, use your thinking brain. Hey, I'm the Messiah. Why would you fast? And then to make his example stick even more, he then introduces 3 parables that are linked or rooted in the actual example of the wine. I'm sorry, of the bridegroom and the bride. Remember, the first thing that's mentioned about the fasting and the wedding, that's not a parable. That's not allegory. That's not that really happened. And so Yeshua's trying to say, hey, if you want to understand why we're doing what we're doing, let me give you 3 parables to just explain the common sense factor, right? No one introduces these 2 elements of a cloth together suddenly, right? New patch, old cloth, old clothing, right? Because if you do, then common sense tells you that there's going to be a problem, right? They're going to rip away from each other when you wash the 2 together. Likewise, with new wine and old wineskins, you thrust them together suddenly, and common sense tells you that there's going to be a problem. Boom, right? The wineskins are going to burst because of fermentation and the stretching and things like that. And likewise, everybody already knows, common sense tells you that the old wine is better because it's already been aged. So those are all 3 of the parables that follow the live example all lend the support to the common sense factor. And so there's really no need to even introduce this pejorative allegory that the Christian church has come up with about Judaism being out and Christianity being in, things like that. So David Stern is he's working from the allegory, but he's trying to offer a better way to look at it. He continues, this is a peculiar conclusion, especially if recalled that Yeshua was speaking with his fellow Jews. Right? We have to constantly remind ourselves that Jesus spoke within a worldview that was favorable to Judaism. He wouldn't go around just upsetting the apple cart if it didn't require it. Yes, this section is called The Old Man, the New Man, and Messianic Judaism. And yes, we must affirm that at the core, Yeshua is always cutting to the heart of the issue. Because the problem with man is his old nature. It's not a problem with God's laws. Remember, they have their limitations, but they're built in by God. Thus, we don't have to impugn them. We don't have to denigrate them. We don't have to look down on God's laws as if they were the ones that were at fault all the time. Instead, we can recognize the built-in limitations of God's laws and praise them for what they are, holy, righteous, and good, like Paul does in Romans chapter 7. What we then do instead is we recognize that the primary problem with us is our old nature, and that a reform needs to take place from the inside out. If the old man can be reformed, then we've got something to work with. If the Spirit of God can change the heart of a man from stone into flesh, then we've got something to work with. And Yeshua knows that, right? He's the wise God. He's God living among us. He's God among men. And so speaking to fellow Jews and just walking around, saying Judaism's out, Christianity's in, right? My teachings are in, the law of Moses is out. Let's replace everything. Hey. That just wouldn't fly with any Jewish person who is seriously worth their place in Israel. Let's keep reading David Stern. Let's finish this paragraph right here, and then we'll call it quits tonight. As rendered here, David Stern is saying, the point is that the only vessel which can hold the new wine of Messianic life in a Jewish setting is a properly renewed, restored, reconditioned, and refreshed Judaism, such as Messianic Judaism was in the first century and aims to be now. So we're looking at David Stern's different way of interpreting this passage. He's of the impression that Messianic Judaism is a viable option for us to choose. As I'm closing, in the ancient historical Christian way of interpreting these elements of this parable, Judaism is irreparable. It cannot be replaced. It's run its course. It's old. It's worn out. It needs to be replaced by a new way of living. Indeed, Judaism is a bankrupt religion because it is a system of works. It's a merit theology system. It's based on righteousness of keeping the commandments of God. And because we as Christians affirm that you cannot work your way into heaven, right? It's not about works, but by grace, right? Grace is saved through faith. Paul's going to go on to say in Ephesians, not of yourself, not of works as any man should boast. Then we in Christianity affirm that it's only through faith that we come into a right relationship with God. And so because Judaism supposedly had their system all backwards by thinking they could earn their salvation by keeping the commandments, then it's necessary for Jesus to rip that old system out at its roots and replace it with a new system of grace in the New Testament and the new covenant way of living, et cetera, et cetera. But David Stern's saying, no, there are manifold problems with those interpretations of this particular passage. But suffice to say, it's not necessary to discard Judaism in order to bring in the truth of what Jesus is trying to preach. Messianic Judaism is a viable option, and so let's work from that particular option, from that particular perspective. We'll pick this up again next week, and perhaps we'll finish David Stern's commentary. I don't want to rush it, so I broke off right there with that, leaving that last little section. But we'll pick this up again next week with Judaism v. Christianity. Are Judaism and Christianity incompatible with one another?